The trial of a Winnebago woman accused of medically abusing her two children for nearly a decade resumes today.
It's been a long, emotional day for the family of Catherine Williams, who stands accused of putting her children through unnecessary medical procedures for nearly a decade.
Prosecutor Ken LaRue brought Dr. Kirsten Simonton to the stand as an expert witness. Simonton says her evaluation of the children found they were victims of unnecessary medical intervention. Defense attorney Sheldon Green questions the scope of research Simonton did into the children's medical history before forming her opinion.
Over that period of time that mom is supposedly exaggerating and falsifying, there were other medical people who saw the children on a very regular, frequent basis.
Williams' family has declined to comment until the end of the trial. The trial is set to continue through January. She's charged with several crimes, including aggravated battery of a child and reckless conduct.